Again, we take this all for granted, but it's a force that has to be accounted for, while we're operating here on Earth. Okay, so gravity, what's another one? What's some other external forces that could be measured as part of a kinetic descriptor? Okay, winds are forces that would play a role.
Friction?
Friction's a force. I mean, obviously, whatever kind of surface you're walking on, you're going to have different behaviors. Okay, and those surfaces have friction, interaction between you and the surface have friction coefficients that are going to impact how you move. What's the example we just gave here on the wall? Pardon me? Okay, you've got to overcome inertia. That's good. So I've got to get my body to move to start with. What else? What's the example I just gave?
The reaction forces.
Right, so you've got reaction forces. Okay? Every time I do something or interact with the environment, it's going to push back against me. So the main reaction force we deal with all the time is what? As I step on the ground, it's pushing back against me. Okay, so that's something that when astronauts return from space flight, they're all wobbly and have a problem. And part of that is, some of that they have muscle weakness and they have inner ear related sickness, but they're also not used to dealing with reaction forces. How do astronauts locomote in the spacecraft? How do they move from one place to another? Right. They just do this. So they take advantage of reaction forces generally with their arms. Okay, because you have a little bit better motor control, and depending on how you push your fingers. Sometimes they'll use their feet if they're going to go a long way, but most of the time they'll go from one place to the other by just pushing off. Okay, and there's still reaction forces up there, and then they just float to where they need to go. Okay, so they maybe, depending on how long the flight is, they haven't had any dealings with reaction forces, in a 1G environment for a couple weeks up to a couple 3 to 6 months. So when they first come back, part of their problem is learning how to handle both these external reaction forces, or their interaction with the ground when they're trying to walk, and their internal reaction forces. Okay, so the internal reaction forces have different magnitudes. When I move my arm in gravity, the amount of internal reaction force that's generated at my shoulder is much different than when I move, did I say in gravity? Yeah, so when you move it in gravity, you get a different internal reaction forces than when you move that the same way in microgravity. Yes, there's still reaction forces, but they're not near as great. So part of the astronaut's problem is basically relearning these coordination modes, or how to deal with both external and internal reaction forces. A lot of times their bodies, if they say, put your limb here, they can contract their muscles and do that. It's this interaction between the environment and them that causes them a lot of problems.